This is module 2 in the Smart Sales System training program. In the previous training module, we provided an introduction to the Smart Sales System. And in this module, we're going to discuss consultative selling. What is consultative selling and how to be a consultative selling salesperson. In order to provide more clarity around what consultative selling is, let's first focus on what is not consultative selling, and that is what I call product selling, which, by the way, is what I believe 90% of salespeople do. Now, just to let you know what I'm going to do on this slide, this is not going to be a real pretty slide with a bunch of pictures. I'm going to make a list that outlines what product selling looks like, and on the other side, I'm going to create a list of what consultative selling looks like. Now, if you really want to be a consultative selling salesperson, this slide will be really helpful, and what will be interesting is that consultative selling is actually the opposite of product selling, and you will actually see that once we fill out this slide and are able to do a full comparison. But let's just first start by talking about what product selling is. So this is an approach where a salesperson will go out and they'll primarily try to sell their product by talking about their product as much as they can. All they really talk about is what they sell and the company they work for. Now, since you're talking primarily about the product you sell and the company you work for and trying to close the deal, this is an all about me approach, similar to like if you went to lunch with someone and all they did was talk about their own stuff. That's what this approach is like, because you're all about, this is who I work for, this is what I sell, do you need what I sell? The product selling salesperson will assume that every prospect that they're talking to and engaging with, they will assume that every prospect needs the product that they sell, and they will try to talk that prospect into wanting what they sell. And with that, they try to sell the product to every prospect, and they are focused on selling products to prospects, and they try to sell the product at every sales process step. So every time they're engaging with a prospect, they're trying to validate, this is what I sell. Do you need what I sell? Because the product selling salesperson is trying to create interest in the product by talking about the product, the salesperson will typically do more or most of the talking when engaging with prospects. And the sales pitch that they deliver will center around explanations and descriptions around what the product is, what it includes, and what it does. And this salesperson and this approach is primarily to try to talk about the product in order to make the prospect interested. So if the prospect says, I'm not interested, the salesperson will try to create more interest by trying to talk more about the product. This approach focuses more on the salesperson's interests. The salesperson's interests are completely different from the prospect's interests. The salesperson's interest is selling the product, advancing their career, making money, having job security, providing for their family. Those interests the prospect is not interested in at all. The prospect is interested in their own company or their own job security or their own family. So this approach focuses more on the salesperson's interests than the prospect's interests. So that's product selling. And if you look at that, and if you're a salesperson and you've been given a territory and a product to sell and are trying to make commissions and make money, you might look at that and say, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with going out and talking about the product and trying to push the product and try to make prospects interested in buying my products? Well, we'll talk about why this is not the most optimum approach, and we'll come back to that in just a couple minutes. But first, I want to show you what the product selling approach looks like in an email. Hello, prospect. I'm a senior account manager with company name. We provide this product, this product, this product. I'm reaching out to you to see if you need what I sell. Can I schedule a 20 to 30-minute meeting with you to try to get you to buy what I sell? Best regards. Now, that outline there, that might seem extreme in that a salesperson would never be that direct and try to be that pushy. But the reality is that I get emails like this every day. And let me give you an example. So I get cold emails from web design companies wanting to sell web design services. And the email will look something very similar to this. I'm with Websites Designed for You, and we provide website design services. We do graphic design. We can do touch-ups or complete rebuilds. Do you need a new website? Can I schedule a meeting with you to talk to you about your website? And that email is following this outline, and it's basically pushing the product, focused on the product, and trying to close the product in terms of saying, I sell web design services. Do you need your website? Do you need to redo your website? And this is very common. I get cold emails like this every day, which are product selling cold emails that basically just push the product. So now let's get back to, well, what's the problem with that? If you have a product to sell, why not send an email saying what you sell and try to see if the prospect needs what you sell? Well, to answer that question, we can go back to the core concepts that we discussed in the last training module. And the first one is that prospects get sold to a lot. The person you're sending an email to or cold calling, they're getting calls and emails every day. So as soon as you sound like a product selling salesperson, their guardedness is going to increase. Whether or not they need what you sell, they're going to start to get a little bit more guarded because you're going to appear that you're a salesperson trying to sell something. And that's exactly what you sound like when you do product selling. If everything you talk about is the product you sell and to try to see if the prospect needs what you sell and to try to make them interested in what you sell, you're going to sound like a salesperson selling something. And that's going to push them away. It's going to trigger more guardedness and trigger objections. The other thing, as I mentioned, is that one of the core concepts is that as humans, we care about our own stuff the most. And let's use that to our advantage and focus more on the prospect's interests than our own. Product selling is focusing more on your product and your interests. And the best salesperson asks the best questions. When you're product selling, you're more likely to talk more about the product, and that will take you away from asking questions about the prospect. The other thing is that prospects are likely not in buying mode for what you sell. We've discussed this, that at the exact time that you call them or email them, they're likely not researching vendors in your area. So if you sell a product selling email, for example, if we go back to the web design subject, maybe I could use improvements on my website. Probably so. But at the exact time that you send an email saying, do you need to redo your website? I might not be thinking I'm looking for a web design firm. So if you're pushing the product and I'm not looking to buy your product, then there's likely a mismatch. So if you operate with the assumption that the prospects are not likely in buying mode, don't be so directly selling the product. In other words, don't be product selling. And we'll talk about another way to go here in a minute. The other core concept that we discussed was don't sell the product, sell the meeting. And if you're selling the product, well, you're more focused on selling the product than selling the meeting. So that's another reason to not do product selling. So if you hear all that and say, well, darn, I'm doing product selling and I'm not doing a good job, don't feel bad. It's very understandable for all of us to do product selling, or even if we try to do consultative selling, to fall back into product selling mode. Because first of all, product selling aligns with our natural instincts. As I discussed, if you're given a product to sell and you have a sales quota and targets to hit and pressure to sell, and also, by the way, you make money when you sell and you need to provide for your family and advance your career, it's only natural for you to go out and to try to talk to as many people as you can about your product and try to talk about your product as much as you can. So it's your natural instinct to do product selling. So don't feel bad. The other thing is that it's typically how companies train salespeople. Companies train salespeople to do product selling. Let me show you how. So if you get hired by a company, they will typically put you through some form of new hire sales training, whether that's a 2-week boot camp or it's someone sitting with you a few hours a day at your desk. They will typically put you through some sort of training, and the training will usually look something like this. Okay, welcome aboard. This is the company. This is what we do. This is the product that we sell. This is the product that you're going to be selling. This is what it does and how it works. These are all the features that are included and how it's packaged. And these are some of the benefits and ways that it helps. And so you'll get hit with a fire hose of all this product information. And sometimes it'll be too much, but that's primarily what they'll train you on. And then this becomes the foundation of your knowledge in your brain. Even after the training, you'll be exposed to this information every day when you're at work and be thinking about this stuff. So you'll become very knowledgeable in this area, and it'll be very easy for you to talk about this. Now, the problem with that is that, like I said, this is a very inward focus. This is all about me. This is all my stuff. You want to start conversations and build relationships with prospects, they have their own stuff. This is all your stuff. And so the problem with this is that when this becomes the foundation of your knowledge and it's the area where you have a lot of experience, and this is the stuff that by you selling, you get paid. When this is the foundation, then when you go out there and you get in front of prospects and you're talking to people, this is what you rely on to figure out what to say. And so whether you're doing introductions and on calls or networking or cold calls or emails, or you're building your website, if you're a business owner, you're doing stuff on social media, you're going to fall back and reflect on this foundation of knowledge. And if your foundation of knowledge is all product information and product details, then then you're going to lean towards product selling because all you're going to do is just go out there and talk about your product. The other thing is that you could make the case that product selling is easier than consultative selling. I'll actually come back to this and make an argument why this is not the case after we talk about consultative selling. But the reality is that if you sell a set of products and you have a lot of knowledge and training on those products, and all you do is talk about your product, then it's easier to think about what to say in a quick moment when you're on a cold call or at a networking event. Not to say that you will say what is optimum or that you'll say something that's good, but you always have something to say because all you're doing is talking about your product. So in some ways, product selling might be easier. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. All right. So now let's come back to this and let's make a comparison of what consultative selling looks like compared to product selling. And as I mentioned, basically each of these points, the exact opposite is what is going to make up consultative selling. So where product selling focuses on really just talking about your product, consultative selling, we're going to focus on talking about the prospect. So instead of talking about the product, our goal is to talk about the prospect. Because we're talking about the prospect, it goes from an all about me approach to all about the prospect. Instead of assuming that every prospect you interact with and are in front of and talking to, and that gives you a minute of their time, instead of assuming that they need your product, we are going to ask questions to see if the prospect needs the product. So instead of talking about the product, we're going to be asking questions. And instead of trying to sell the product to every prospect we talk to, we're looking for prospects that need our product. So let me give you an example. So if you were a doctor and you had a medicine that cures some sort of ailment or disease, the product selling salesperson would try to sell that medicine to people that are healthy. The consultative selling person is going to ask questions to determine if the people they talk to need the medicine. So the consultative salesperson is trying to find the people that need the medicine, trying to find the prospects that need the help. Product selling salesperson is just trying to push the product, push the help on someone that might not need the help. Because we're asking good questions and learning about the prospects and finding prospects that need our help, instead of just pushing the product, we are providing our product as a solution to the prospect's needs. Instead of trying to sell the product at every step of the sales process, meaning, do you need what I sell? Going to back to that web design email, instead of sending an email saying, do you need web design? We're trying to sell the next step in the process. So if the next step in the process is a meeting, we're trying to sell the meeting. In product selling, the salesperson does most of the talking to try to talk about the product as much as they can, talk about as many of the features as they can to try to build interest in the product. The consultative salesperson tries to get the prospect talking an equal amount of time, tries to get the prospect either talking more than the salesperson or an equal amount of time. And the way that they do that is that the sales pitch is centered around asking good questions. A product selling salesperson, when they're trying to organize their sales pitch in their head, they may try to think about, how can I explain these features in the most appealing, attractive way? The consultative salesperson, when they're trying to organize their sales pitch, they need to think about, what questions can I ask to learn the most about the prospects that I talk to? And as I mentioned, the product selling salesperson really just tries to talk about the product to generate interest. The consultative salesperson goes one step further and will focus more on the benefits that the product delivers, the improvements that the product delivers, the problems that the product can make go away, the return on investment, client examples. And because the consultative salesperson is focusing more on the prospect, learning about the prospect, trying to find their challenges, their needs, their interests, trying to solve those by providing a solution that includes their product, the consultative salesperson is going to be more focused on the prospect's interests than the salesperson's interests. All right, so I just went through a big comparison, a lot of different nuts and bolts and factors. Let me just try to simplify this. And the slide I show you here, we're going to keep coming back to throughout the SMART training program, but hopefully this slide kind of simplifies everything that I just went through. The product selling salesperson will primarily talk about, this is the company I work for. This is the product I sell. This is what it does. This is how it helps. Do you need what I sell? And that outline right there is actually aligns with the email examples that I showed you. And that outline can align with a cold call, can align with a cold call. This is who I'm with. This is what I sell. Do you need what I sell? Can I schedule a meeting with you? Right? Now let's look at what a consultative salesperson approach can look like from a very simplified standpoint. Instead of leading with the product and the company that you work for, the consultative salesperson can lead with, these are the improvements I deliver, and these are the pain points and problems I help to address. So that's what they can lead with when they're engaging with new prospects. And the centerpiece of their approach and their sales pitch is asking good questions, asking questions to see if the prospect has the pain points that they can help with. Then they can start to introduce the product that they sell as a solution to any challenges or interests that they uncovered through their questions. Then they can talk about the company they work for and how the company they work for and the product that they sell is different than the competition. They might share a customer example in order to further explain how they help build more interest, establish credibility. And the consultative approach is more around starting conversations instead of closing the deal or moving to the next step of the process. Let me just dig in a little bit on the sales process and closing the next step of the sales process subject. So let's just say you're engaging with cold prospects, interacting with them for the first time, whether email, cold call, networking, whatever. So let's just call that the first step of the sales process, which is the initial interaction. The end of the sales process would be the customer buying from you. The product selling salesperson primarily focuses on this. Even if they're talking for the first time, the product selling approach is all around, this is what I sell. Do you need what I sell? Every time they talk with the prospect, they're trying to validate a need and interest. And the reality is that there's a lot of steps in between these two steps, meaning we will probably need to talk multiple times. And at some point, I might need to explain how I can help. So the consultative approach is different from this in that right out of the gate, we're not even talking about the product purchase because we don't even know if the prospect needs what we sell. We solve problems and deliver improvements, but if the prospect doesn't have those problems or doesn't need those improvements, there's no point in even really digging into what the product does and try to validate an interest in purchasing. So out of the gate, the consultative approach is more about selling conversations than selling products. And that's one of the core concepts of the smart sales system approach. And then, of course, once you continue to move along, you move beyond trying to sell the conversation, and then you're just trying to sell the next step of the process, but you're still trying to take the prospect through a structured process and not selling the purchase. After the conversation, you might try to sell the explanation. This is how I can help. And you try to sell the opportunity to explain how you can help. And then at some point towards the end of the sales process, you're focused on selling the purchase. But that's how consultative selling is different from product selling from a sales process standpoint. And that can have a huge impact on your sales efforts. I'll just give you an example. And going back to objections, if you're doing cold outreach and your prospect says, we don't have budget right now, if you're in product selling mode and you're focused on trying to validate a need, interest, and ability to purchase the product in that first initial interaction, then that objection is valid and that it doesn't make sense for us to continue any further because the prospect doesn't have budget right now. But if you're in consultative selling mode and you're not trying to sell the product, trying to sell the meeting, then you can have an objection response of something like, oh, hey, I understand it. Listen, I don't even know if you guys are a good fit with what we do. I'm not trying to sign you guys up today. All I'm trying to do is open the dialogue between our two organizations. That way, when your budget planning starts and your budget opens back up, you can know who we are and how we can help. And maybe then we can re-engage down the road at that point in more detail. So all I'm looking for is just a brief introductory conversation. Are you available if I can put that on your calendar? Doesn't have to be next week. We're not going anywhere, maybe a few weeks down the road. What do you think? So again, that's an objection response that's based on the consultative approach of selling the conversation. So once you get out of product selling and really adopt consultative selling and focus more on selling the meeting and not the product, it can impact everything you say and everything you do with prospects. And that can have a huge impact on your ability to not only establish relationships, create rapport, get engaged, manage opportunities through your sales process, but ultimately it can help you to improve the leads you generate and close more deals. All right. So let's get back to the subject of, is consultative selling more difficult? And what I will tell you, consultative selling is a more sophisticated approach, and you'll actually look more sophisticated to your prospects. If you go from product selling and all you do is talk about your product to being a consultative salesperson, you're going to make a better impression and you're going to seem more sophisticated. So it does take a little bit more thought, okay? But let's break this down. So is consultative selling more difficult? Well, I already admitted earlier that if all you're doing is talking about your product, it's easier just to talk about your product because you've likely been trained and have a bunch of product knowledge already in your head. The other thing is that the consultative approach is centered around asking good questions, and I will admit that it can be difficult to know what question to ask. One of our core beliefs is the best salesperson asks the best questions, and you could agree with that, but still not know what questions to ask. So it can be difficult to know what questions to ask. Another thing that can be difficult is that part of the consultative approach is talking about what improvements your product can deliver to your prospective customer. And I will admit that this can be difficult. If all you have is product knowledge in your head, it can be difficult to know or communicate what improvements you can make. It can also be unclear what pain points to look for. If your product solves certain problems, it can be unclear to know what problems to look for, especially you might sell to different industries or different buyers. So this can be a little bit difficult. But now let's think about, in what ways is consultative selling easier? Well, first of all, if you're using a consultative approach, you're going to trigger less guardedness. You're going to sound less like a pushy salesperson. You're going to seem more sophisticated. You're going to make a better impression. You're going to build more rapport. So you're going to trigger less guardedness, and that's going to make things easier. You're also going to face less objections. Not only are you going to have a better way to respond to objections and get around objections, but from a quantity standpoint, you're going to have less prospects that are just providing objections and rejecting you and trying to get rid of you. You're also going to work better quality leads because instead of just trying to create leads for every prospect that you talk to, you're going to ask good questions, learn about your prospects, and the leads that you generate are going to be of better quality because you're going to know more about them. So you're going to have a better, healthier pipeline. And because you're working better leads, closing is actually going to be easier. We're going to have a whole training module on how to be a better closer. I actually believe that using the smart sales system, closing is actually one of the easiest steps of the process. Because when you do product selling, that's where you are trying to close prospects that don't need what you sell because you didn't learn about them and you're just trying to sell to everybody. And that's where you feel like you have to get aggressive and pushy and might feel like you don't have the right personality to be a good closer, and closing is really difficult. When you use a consultative approach and you're asking good questions and building interest and communicating very effectively and building interest and qualifying and having a healthy pipeline, I truly believe closing is the easiest step. And in many ways, deals often just kind of close themselves at the end. And the other thing is that getting back to not knowing what question to ask or what benefits to talk about or what pain points to look for, with our approach, what you can do is you can create a sales message on the front end. So it's about stopping selling and just taking a step back and organizing your thoughts to create a sales message and going through a process to organize, okay, this is what I sell. I got that. Now, what improvements does that deliver? What problems does that make go away? And you put that brainstorming and those thoughts into a sales message, and then you use that sales message to create your cold call script or your email messages or your objection responses. And then that can reduce the challenge of what's more difficult with consultative selling, which is figuring out what questions to ask or what to say. The process of stopping and organizing that on the front end can decrease that. So that's my assessment on which is easier. Like I said, in some ways, product selling is easier, but you're going to get rejected more objections, have difficulty closing, or you can go through a more organized approach, build your sales message, try to be more consultative, and then the whole process of selling could be easier. So let me give you a real world example of comparing product selling with consultative selling. And this is actually from experience. Over the years, I've joined many different gyms, and I'm going to use the example of signing up at a gym and going through a product selling approach or a consultative selling approach. And I can just tell you that every gym that I've joined was through the salesperson using a product selling approach. And like I said, I think that 95% of salespeople use a product selling approach. So that there's no big surprise there. But let's say that we walk into a gym interested in signing up and we're greeted by a salesperson and they're using a product selling approach. So right when we walk in, the first thing they do is they take us on a tour. Here are the treadmills, here are the weight machines, basketball court, lap pool, here's our yoga studio, we have personal training services, here's our cafe. And then after they take you on a tour, they take you to a table or to their office, and then they sit down and they provide you with 3 membership options and they try to close you on one of the options. So that's the product selling approach. The tour is basically, here's my product, and then they're trying to close the sale after they show you the product. Now let's look at what that might look like if we use a consultative approach. So you walk in and you're greeted by the salesperson, and if they're in consultative selling mode, instead of taking you on a tour, they take you to that table or to their office first. And they spend 10, 15, 20 minutes talking about you, asking questions. Do you go to a gym today? Do you work out? How often do you work out? What are your goals? What are any pain points or challenges or health issues that you're looking to improve? What are your goals? What are you looking for in a gym? And so they ask all these questions to learn about the prospect. After they've learned about the prospect, then they take them on a tour. And the tour then can be tailored to everything that was just discussed. You said you like yoga. Here's our yoga studio, and here's our class schedule for yoga. Here are other classes that are similar to yoga, and they can tailor everything they show to that prospect's needs. So they can tailor the product demonstration. Now, because the consultative approach is all about talking about improvements, the consultative salesperson can go beyond talking about this is our equipment and facility and can talk about all of the improvements that the product can deliver. Now, you can very easily see a treadmill as a physical piece of equipment, but if someone wants to get healthier and they use that piece of equipment, well, what does that mean? Well, that means they might get healthier, they might lose weight, get more tone, they might decrease stress because they walk on the treadmill after work, they might sleep better at night because of the physical activity, they may decrease how often they have to go to the doctor, they may decrease their medical expenses, they may improve their personal relationships, they may improve their career. And when you add up all of that, they might transform their life. So as that consultative salesperson is talking about the product and the equipment, they can emphasize all of those improvements. They could share an example of someone's in a similar situation with similar interests that they came and joined the gym, and they can talk about the improvements that that other person realized. And then after all of that very powerful conversation, then they can talk about the membership options and try to close the sale. Now think about which of those scenarios is the easier close. Is it, here's my product and here are my membership options. What can I get you to do to sign up today? Can I give you a discount to prevent you from walking out not signing up? And then compare that to the other person who is talking about showing something that will transform their life transformation. So what's more powerful, life transformation or treadmills? And that's an example of how, like I said, when you use a consultative approach, the close becomes a lot easier. And in some ways, the deals can often just close themselves. So that's pretty much it for consultative selling. The next module will be how to build your consultative selling sales message. We'll take you through a step-by-step process that you can use to organize your thoughts, brainstorm the key points that should be in your sales message. As I mentioned, in some ways, consultative selling can be more difficult to figure out what to say, but you eliminate that difficulty by just taking a step back and organizing your thoughts on the front end, and then use that to create your sales message, and then that eliminates that challenge. And that's what we'll show you how to do in the next training module. If you've learned at least one new thing, if you've gotten at least one tip and you want to return the favor, very easy for you to do. Simply like, comment, share this video, subscribe to our channel. Any or all of those will help us tremendously, and none of those cost you anything. If you like our tips, you may want to follow us on social media on any of these platforms. We post daily sales tips on all of these in 30 to 60 second little video clips, clipped from these long form video formats. If you want more help beyond that, everything I've shown you here today is part of the SMART sales system. SMART stands for sales messaging and response tactics. We believe that a salesperson's best sales tool is the words that they use, the words that they say, the words they put in emails. And so we provide a process to help them to build the most optimum, powerful, attention-grabbing sales message. And then we also help with how to respond to objections, how to respond to questions. And it's all about tactics. We don't just put a lot of fluffy stuff out there. It's all about tactics of do this next, don't do this, exact processes on what to do. And we call it a system because it's a 3-level system, with level 1 being your sales message. I've talked to you a few times here today about to be a consultative salesperson, salesperson, it's about organizing your sales message. So level one in the SMART approach, because the SMART sales system is a consultative selling approach, the foundation of the SMART sales system is to create your sales message, and that will feed everything else. Because once you have your sales message organized, then you can very easily use that to create your cold call scripts, your email templates, voicemail scripts, objection responses, whatnot. And then once you have all those documents and tools in place, then you can progress to level three, which is execution. So once you have your call script, then you can more confidently go out there and do cold calling or objection handling, dealing with gatekeepers, cold emailing, and whatnot. Now, the good news is to implement the SMART sales system, it's actually all on YouTube for free. For example, you could go to this playlist here, the SMART sales system, sell smarter, not harder. And there's a module here for each step of the SMART sales system. The reason why we give it away for free is because all of this aligns with a software product that we sell called Sales Scripter. For example, as I mentioned, the foundation of the SMART sales system is creating your sales message, having a sales message. And there's an area of Sales Scripter called the Sales Message Builder that will take you through the step-by-step process. We're actually going to show you next week the step-by-step process. You can do the process outside of Sales Scripter, but it's much easier to do it inside of Sales Scripter and do your brainstorming. The software will take you through the process. Also, you likely will end up needing more than one sales message. So Sales Scripter helps you to keep all those different sales messages organized in Sales Scripter. So that will be more difficult outside of Sales Scripter. And Sales Scripter aligns with level 2 as well, in that there's an area called the Sales Playbook. You can create all these documents outside of Sales Scripter, but there's a whole library of scripts and emails and voicemails and whatnot in Sales Scripter. These are basically templates that fill in with your sales message. And that's how you get a custom tailored library of documents inside of Sales Scripter. And then Sales Scripter also aligns with level 3. It can also help you with execution in terms of helping you with cold calling and email automation, cold emailing. We have a CRM and email automation. So the upgrade from there would be you can certainly buy consulting hours with me, and I can help you with any of these levels. Level 1, creating your sales message. Level 2, creating your script or your emails. Level 3, helping you with execution. If that's interesting, but you still don't know what to do next, you could buy the book that I wrote called The Smart Sales System, Sell Smarter, Not Harder, and you can get that on Amazon here. That's pretty much it. Hope this was helpful. And if you want more information on anything, if you want more tips, more videos, free ebooks, go to salescripter.com. There's also information on our software product at salescripter.com. You can contact us through the website. There's a chat feature, and let us know if you have any questions. And thanks for being here. Thanks for staying to the end of the video. We'll see you on the next training video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.